Everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here with a breaking news update. Who killed Atatiana Jefferson. If you're not familiar with the case, a neighbor woke up. It was like 2:30 in the morning, and he noticed that the lady who lived across the street, her front door was open, and so he was concerned, and he called the non-emergency police number to let them know that he was concerned about his neighbor and to ask if they could do a wellness check. And so Fort Worth police officers arrived on the scene. It never went to the front door, never knocked on the door, or did anything like that. They immediately start casing the house, and then they got on the side of the house or the back of the house, and one of the officers noticed somebody was looking out the window. Of course, he starts yelling, show me your hands, or whatever that crap was that Amber Geiger claimed that she was yelling at Botham Jean. And I believe they said within 3 to 4 seconds, he opened fire, shot through the window that she was looking through, and killed her. Well, it was announced about earlier today that the officer, and his name is Aaron Dean, he's a white guy, because aren't they always white? But he was supposed to meet with the police chief today, and they basically was going to fire him because he broke all the rules. But he decided to resign instead, and so that came out earlier today. And then about an hour ago, it hit the news cycle that he had been charged with murder. And so I'm going to read you guys an article that comes from ABC News. The police officer who fatally shot a Fort Worth, Texas woman in her home while answering a call for a welfare check has been arrested on murder charges. The charge comes after the officer abruptly resigned on Monday just before he was about to be fired for allegedly violating multiple departmental policies, the police chief said. The officer, identified earlier Monday as Aaron Dean, is being held without bond in Tarrant County, according to court records. Quote, I recently have not been able to make sense of why she had to lose her life, Fort Worth Police Chief Ed Krause said at a news conference prior to the arrest, in reference to the early Saturday morning killing of Atatiana Jefferson. On behalf of the men and women of the Fort Worth Police Department, I'm so sorry for what occurred. Krause identified the officer who shot Jefferson, 28, as Dean, who was hired by the police force in August of 2017 and was commissioned as a licensed peace officer on April 13, 2018. Now, I believe that Amber Geiger hadn't been a police officer that long as well. So there's obviously something going on in the training of these police officers, that they're out here just murdering people for no reason. So the police chief said he was scheduled to meet with Dean on Monday morning, but the officer tendered his resignation before they had a chance to meet. Had the officer not resigned, I would have fired him for violations of several policies, including our use of force policy, our de-escalation policy, and unprofessional conduct, Krause said. But Jefferson's grieving family said Dean should have never been given the opportunity to resign. They felt that he should have been fired on the spot and taken into custody as soon as it was revealed that he killed her, and that the police chief had the opportunity to review the body cam, which really showed that he was out of order and there was no justification for the shooting. So it says, quote, he should have been fired before this, end quote, Jefferson's brother, Darius Carr, told ABC News. Jefferson's sister, Ashley Carr, added that while her family welcomed apologies from the police chief and other city officials, including the mayor, she told ABC News, "It's not the end result we're looking for. I want justice for my sister," Ashley Carr said. "I want her death not to be in vain." She said her sister was a pre-med graduate of Xavier University of Louisiana who dropped her career ambitions to return home to Texas to care for their ailing mother. She said Jefferson was also helping their sister Amber, who recently underwent heart surgery, raise her two young children, including their 8-year-old nephew Zion, who witnessed her being shot to death. And so this was the crazy part about this whole situation, is that Atatiana was actually up with her nephew. They were playing video games when all of this went down. So this poor little 8-year-old is basically going to be traumatized, and I don't think it's hit him yet, because there was a news story that I was watching earlier in the day where they were interviewing the sister, and the sister was saying that she didn't know what had happened with Atatiana, and that the nephew was the one that broke the news to her. And she says, she's laying in the bed crying, can't breathe, how you become overwhelmed with emotion, and that the 8-year-old was actually comforting her, telling her to take deep breaths and to breathe, that everything was going to be okay. And it took me back to what was the guy named Castile, what was his name, Pedro? Remember the guy in Minnesota who was killed by the police officer, and he was in the car with his girlfriend and the girlfriend's daughter, and the mother was crying, the girlfriend was boohoo crying, and the daughter was in the back seat trying to calm her down and tell her that everything was going to be okay. They were in the back of the police car. This is going to drive me. Philando Castro, I think is Philando Castile, I think his name was. But anyway, just the strength that little kids have to show in times of situations that they shouldn't even be witnessing, but they have to be strong. And it's like they know, like kids already know, that we are treated so unfairly and so unjustly, that they are learning, to deal with these traumas that Black people are facing. And for me, it just takes their youthfulness away, that they have to constantly, go through these situations and be witnesses to people that they love, people who haven't done anything wrong, being gunned down by police. The family's attorney, civil rights lawyer Lee Merritt, who I'm about tired of, y'all, and I'll tell you why in a minute, said the next development loved ones of Jefferson are hoping for is that Dean suffer the consequences of his actions. And the reason I say sick of Lee Merritt is because he was the attorney that represented both of John's family, and then he also kind of stepped in with the Joshua Brown situation. And then as things started to be revealed about Joshua Brown and his past, he kind of like went silent, and we haven't really heard him talking about Joshua Brown or giving updates on Joshua Brown. And I was wondering earlier today, is the police still looking for the guy that killed Joshua Brown? Like, we got this story about the drug deal gone bad and all of this, but then we haven't heard anything in like the last 3 or 4 days. We know that they arrested the one guy that was in the hospital. They arrested the uncle of the guy in the hospital, but the guy who actually killed Joshua Brown evidently is still on the loose. But I'll do a second video to talk about that. So back to this article, it says, quote, "The opportunity to resign is a slap in the family's face, and it's a slap in the community's face," Merritt said. He should have never been given the option, and I want us to stop treating this like it's a bad apple case. The saying is, a bad apple spoils the bunch, but the barrel is rotten to the core, or rotten from the core. And so one of the reasons that Lee Merritt is getting on my nerves is because he's obviously trying to become the next Benjamin Crump. You know how Benjamin Crump gained notoriety with the Trayvon Martin case and then the Mike Brown case. And so now he's like the attorney that everybody calls when these type of incidents happen. And so Lee Merritt seems to be, setting his foundation to be that attorney that everybody calls when something bad, happens in Dallas, Texas, or in the Texas area. So I don't know. It's just something about him that bothers me. I don't know. And I mean, I know it's not the time, and we should be focusing, on the murder of Joshua Brown and the murder of Atatiana. But I don't know. He just bothers me for some reason. Then Krause, the police chief, said an internal investigation and a criminal investigation of Dean would proceed, and that he was sent a preliminary report of the shooting. He has sent a preliminary report of the shooting to the FBI to review for possible civil rights violations. And then Krause says that Dean has not been cooperating with the investigation, adding, quote, he resigned before his opportunity to cooperate, end quote. So the chief said prior to the arrest, he was getting frequent updates on the criminal investigation against Dean and anticipated that he would be able to provide the public with a, quote, substantial update no later than Tuesday. He also said Dean's separation paperwork would be sent to the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, the agency in charge of licensing and certifying peace officers, quote, will reflect that he was dishonorably discharged from the Fort Worth, Dallas Police Department. And it says Krause made the announcement after Mayor Betsy Price expressed outrage over the shooting and berated the police department for releasing a photo of a handgun found in Jefferson's home, saying, quote, there is nothing that could justify what happened on Saturday morning, nothing. And then it says the gun is irrelevant. She was in her own home caring for her 8-year-old nephew. Atatiana was a victim, the mayor says. Krause echoed the mayor, saying the photo of the gun that was released to the public, quote, was a bad thing to do, end quote, and was apparently intended to, quote, show what the perceived threat may have been, end quote. He said the gun was found just inside the window where Jefferson, who, according to her family, had a permit to carry a concealed weapon, was shot. And then Krause goes on to say, I can't imagine most of us, if we thought we had somebody outside our house that shouldn't be there and we had access to a firearm, that we wouldn't act very similarly to how she reacted. But Merritt said he interpreted the move as an attempt to, quote, cast apprehensions on Tay to give the officer Dean an out. Quote, this was their attempt to justify the unjustifiable, Merritt told ABC News. And so this kind of goes into why I don't like Lee Merritt, because one of the things with the Joshua Brown story that really infuriated me was the fact that we had the Lee Merritt guy putting out false information. Then we had all these influencers on social media with the blue checks that have these huge followings that were out there just saying all this stuff, going along with these conspiracy theories, that the police, was a setup, that Joshua Brown didn't have a police record, Joshua Brown didn't sell drugs, and then all of this stuff started coming out, all these videos from his social media, and all this stuff started coming out, and then, the police records were found. No, he didn't have a police record in Dallas, I don't think, but he had one in Florida, and so all this stuff starts coming out, and then all of a sudden, all these people with these large platforms that was, putting out about the conspiracy suddenly go quiet. You don't hear anything else from them about Joshua Brown. And so now they've moved on to the next case, and they're doing the same thing with it, which is, people are already upset. We're already like, dang, why another black person had to be killed when they were minding their own business, not doing anything. And so even though, we have this distrust of the police are coming out saying, like, no matter how angry and upset we are, they still have to do their investigation, because, like it or not, say they had arrested this guy before they investigated anything, before they just said, okay, well, he shot her, let's arrest him. By the time the thing got to court, it could have all fallen apart. So as much as we don't like the fact that there's a process and we want things to happen just like this, you still have to let the process move along at the right pace so that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted, and that there aren't reasons for an appeal. There aren't reasons to then have to backpedal and, instead of a murder charge, you end up with an assault charge or something like that. And so, and I know that pisses a lot of people off, because when I was talking about the Joshua Brown case, people were getting angry and upset with me, but I'm like, like it or not, it's the process, and it doesn't help the situation when people are just giving out misinformation. And then we have the situation where now you have the Black Twitter community up in arms, and they're trying to keep the Joshua Brown story alive. But then the people with the influence, they've kind of like tucked their tails and ran away. So the article goes on to say, after spending the weekend hearing from outraged community residents and friends and relatives of Jefferson, Price apologized on behalf of the city of Fort Worth. And it says, we are all heartbroken today. Atatiana was a beautiful, smart, amazing young woman by all accounts, who was unjustly taken from her family. Price said the entire city is in pain. As a mother, grandmother, a sister, an aunt, I can't imagine anything worse, and I am so sorry. Calling the circumstances a pivotal moment for the city, the mayor said she had ordered the creation of a third-party panel of national experts to review the department. Fort Worth City Manager David Cook announced he will assemble an independent review board for the police department and will begin interviewing candidates for an independent police monitor. Prior to receiving news of Dean's resignation, Jefferson's relatives demanded the officer be immediately fired and arrested, and that the federal government take charge of the investigation. Quote, this man murdered someone. He should be arrested, said Adarius Carr, a member of the U.S. Navy. I've served my country for the last 12 years. In that time, I've been trained and taught that there are pre-planned responses for everything you do, everything you're trained about. There's a way to do things, and when you don't do it in the way you've been trained to or the way you've been taught, you have to answer for that, Carr said. The Fort Worth PD cannot investigate themselves. The U.S. Navy is not allowed to do it. They should not be as well. Merritt said the shooting shows that the Fort Worth Police Department is, quote, in need of serious systematic reform. He said the family is calling on the Department of Justice or the FBI to investigate the killing, adding that the officer should be vigorously prosecuted. We expect this to happen immediately, Merritt said. The shooting, happened Saturday. Why this man is not in handcuffs right now is a source of continued agitation for this family and for this community, and it must be addressed. And that was a comment that came out prior to the arrest. And then they have a post from the NAACP that said, unacceptable. The acts of yet another trained police officer have resulted in the death of Atatiana Jefferson, gunned down in her home. If we are not safe to call the police, if we are not safe in our homes, where can we find peace? We demand answers. We demand justice. And then they have a picture of her. And that was liked over 22,000 times, and there were over 12,000 comments on that post, and that was posted on October 12th. And then it says the shooting unfolded after 2:30 a.m. on Saturday after a neighbor of Jefferson's called the police department's non-emergency line to ask that a welfare check be conducted on Jefferson's home because the lights were on and the back and front doors were open. Lieutenant Brandon O'Neill said at a news conference Sunday afternoon that 2 officers were sent to the home on East Allen Avenue. He said the officers arrived at the house at 2:29 a.m. and parked near Jefferson's home, but not in front of the residence. O'Neill said the officers walked around the back of the house and that one of the officers observed the person through the rear window of the home and opened fire. Chief Krause added on Monday that the officers never knocked on the front door. Which, if you're called in to do a wellness check, I would think would be the first thing that you would do. And then it says body camera footage released by the department shows Dean approaching a rear window of the home with his gun drawn. The officer sees the woman through the window, shouts, "Put your hands up, show me your hands," and fires one shot. Perceiving a threat, the officer drew his duty weapon and fired one shot, striking the person inside the residence. A statement from the police department reads. It says responding officers entered the home, located the shooting victim, and began providing emergency care. Jefferson died at the scene. O'Neill said Dean never identified himself as a police officer to Jefferson. What the officer observed and why he did not announce police will be addressed as the investigation continues, O'Neill said. Merritt said that Jefferson and her nephew Zion were playing a Call of Duty video game when they heard someone in the bushes outside their home and went to a bedroom window to investigate. He said Jefferson stopped her nephew from looking out the window and that she was shot when she peered into the darkness. It was less than a second, Merritt said of the shooting. I had an expert slow it, the body camera video down. It was 6 seconds between the command and the shot. There was no time for them to perceive a threat from a weapon. There was no time for her to respond. It was reckless, deadly behavior. Ashley Carr said her sister never mentioned being afraid of getting killed by police. We obeyed laws. We didn't walk in fear because we did what we thought was right, she told ABC News. Now you could still do what's right, but it's coming from fear, and that's scary. Adarius Carr said he hopes people remember his sister for how she lived. I want everyone to remember my sister like I remember her. Just a fun-loving, easygoing, hilarious young lady who just wanted to serve and be better. Make sure our family was good, he said. A very beautiful soul, absolutely. My life is upside down without her. So guys, this is just, I don't know, it's just so depressing. It makes me so angry. Because you have all this crime going on in the world. Police have enough things to focus their attention on that people like Atatiana, people like Botham Jean, who are just being killed for no reason. The Philando Castile guy. People that just minding their own business. Eric Gardner. People that just minding their business. Trayvon Martin, just minding their business, and their life just get taken away from them. For what reason? I mean, like, if you're a police officer and you just walk up to a window and open fire through the window, you're not investigating a crime. You did not receive a call from 911 of somebody in distress. You receive a call from the non-emergency number saying, can somebody come check on my neighbor because it's 2 o'clock in the morning, it's 2:30 in the morning, and her door is wide open, and it is unusual for her door to be wide open, and you show up, and instead of going to the front door and yelling police, you decide to case the house, to search, go walk around the yard. He said the front door was open. He didn't say somebody was in the backyard. He didn't say I saw somebody walk up and go around the side of the house and enter the backyard. It's like, I don't understand it. What is wrong with these people? And you can't say that it's just, because he's a white officer and she was a black woman, that he killed her because she was black, because he didn't know who was in that doggone house. He didn't know what the threat was, if there was a threat. Like, there has to be something up here that's disconnecting with these people. And I don't know if, like, I wish they would do a study on the number of police that kill people without justification to see what their video game activity is. Like, do they play nonstop? Are they, these video games where you killing people, you win the game by the number of people that you kill? Like, is that screwing up their brains and their ability to reason? Is that why this is happening? I don't know. And then this kind of like, it really bothered me because I was telling, I had posted on Facebook how I've gotten up late at night. And like my daughter has this thing where I have the blinds open in the kitchen. And for some reason, if she goes to bed after me, she doesn't close the blinds. I don't know if she don't notice that the blinds are open or what. But I wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and then I'll walk through the house and make sure they're okay. And then the blinds are open, and I'll go close the blinds. So twice, probably in the last, it happened about 2 months ago, and then the time before that was several years ago, where I've gotten up in the middle of the night. It's like 3:30 in the morning, and my neighbor's garage door is open, and it's just unusual. The person that he would never leave his garage door open, and it just like bothers me. And I'm standing there like, waiting to see if he's going to come back out. Maybe he's in the truck, and he's about to get out the truck and go in the house. And so I'm standing there, and the whole time I'm standing there waiting to see, like, what is he getting ready to do? Is he out there? Does he know that the garage door is open? I'm thinking maybe I should call the police and like have them go check it out and make sure everything is okay. And then I say, no, I don't want to do that, because then it might turn out bad. It might turn out just how this situation turned out. So I'm just like, okay, well, I hope he's okay. I hope he just, maybe the door didn't close, the garage door didn't close or whatever, and that they're okay. And then I go to bed. And people were saying, like, the neighbor should have minded his own business. He should have called her on the phone. He should have gone over there. Okay, you don't know what you would do in that situation. And, like the guy said, it was 2:30 in the morning. So now you're going to have a black man leaving his house, going over to her house, and then maybe she see him outside or at the door and get nervous and call the police and say there's a man outside my house, and then the police show up and end up killing him. Like, you just never know how these situations are going to end. Or he's going across the street and another neighbor see him going across the street and be like, okay, why are he going to her house at this time of night? And then they call the police on him, and the police show up and shoot him. And so now this man, and he was actually a black man, an older black man. So now he has to live with this, knowing that because he was concerned about this young lady and did what he thought was right, that it ended up costing her her life. And so somebody had posted on my post when I shared that story. They were like, oh, well, what I do is I call my neighbors on the phone and let them know. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, not everybody have their neighbors' phone numbers. I mean, my mom has lived, and my parents lived and bought their house in 1969. My mom lives there to this day. And I can tell you, she probably don't have her neighbors' phone numbers. I don't have my neighbors' phone numbers. I speak to them in passing. Some of them don't speak at all. Like, we live in a society where people stay in their homes. They don't want to get to know each other. You can speak to them. Like, I've spoken to my next door neighbors, and either they blind or can't hear, and then if you run into them somewhere, or if they need something, then all of a sudden they want to talk to you. But it's just the way of the world. So I can personally see how he was saying, this is the option that he chose. Let me call the non-emergency number. Let me say to them, I don't see any illegal activity. I'm just concerned that her door is wide open. Can you do a wellness check? And it's still turned into a situation where this police officer killed this young woman. And I don't know the answer. I wish I knew the answer. And I sit here and I think about our local police department. I think the last time our police department killed somebody, it was a young guy by the name of Tyron Lewis. And that was in 1995, I think it was. And he was in a car. He was pulled over for a traffic stop. And somebody, police officer, ended up in front of the car and said that he felt threatened that the boy was going to run him over, and so he opened fire on the car instead of getting his butt from in front of the car, and he killed that young man, and we had like a disturbance for a couple of nights. And I really think that's the last time a St. Petersburg police officer killed somebody. Now in Pinellas County, then had a couple of shootings because they're the sheriff of so like St. Petersburg has a police department and we have a chief of police. Then Pinellas County, which St. Petersburg is in Pinellas County, they have a sheriff, and their sheriff, he's a nice guy outside of his uniform, but once he got that uniform on, he is an asshole. If you guys are familiar with the case that just happened here with the white guy that killed, his last name is Draca, but he killed this black guy named Marquise McLaughlin, and they were at a convenience store. And so this guy had a history of harassing, the Draca guy, had a history of harassing people at this store. And he was like the parking lot police, and he would argue with people about how they were parking in a handicapped space. And I believe Marquise's girlfriend and their kids were in the car. They were in the car waiting while he ran into the store, and they were in the handicap spot, I believe. So he's out there arguing with the girlfriend. Somebody comes in the store and talks about this crazy guy out there arguing. And so the store had problems with him before. And so the Marquise runs out of the store. He's arguing with the Draca guy, and he shoves him. And the Draca guy falls on the ground and then pulls out a gun and shoots Marquise. And Marquise was actually, after he pushed him, was biking up, like retreating from the situation. So our sheriff, Bob Gutierrez, said he wasn't going to charge this guy because the shooting was justified because of the Florida stand your ground laws. If you guys remember, George Zimmerman got off killing Trayvon Martin, because they said that, it was stand your ground and he had every right to shoot and kill this boy, which is crazy. But then on the flip side, there was this lady in Jacksonville who tried to use the stand your ground defense when she shot her, I believe it was her husband or her boyfriend. She was in an abusive relationship, and she didn't even shoot him. I think she shot a warning shot. And so they arrested her and sentenced her to like 20 years in prison, but I believe her sentence was overturned. But the Draca guy went on trial. He was eventually charged with the murder because the state attorney stepped in and overruled the sheriff and said, no, we're going to charge him. This is not stand your ground. And so he was charged. He was found guilty. And last week, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. So there was justice in that case. But as far as police shooting innocent people, like our police, they don't even really shoot people. I can't think of the police. Oh, the friend, I take that back. One of my Facebook friends, her son was shot by police, but he had just gotten off of house arrest. And I mean, like literally had just gotten off of house arrest. Like they had literally just taken the bracelet off his ankle, and he was bike out stealing cars. And so he was in a stolen car. Police arrived. They shot him. I think he tried to leave in the car and the police shot him. Thank God he didn't die, but he might be paralyzed or have some type of disability. But they ended up suing the police and they won their lawsuit. But like, can't really think. Now the police do get in trouble. We had an incident about a month ago where 3 police officers, I think one was fired and the other 2 received suspensions for improper conduct on how they treated these guys doing an arrest. But for the most part, our police department, the most you're going to see them doing is sitting in parking lots or standing on the side of the road running their mouth. You'd be lucky if they show up. You call them about a crime. You'll be lucky if they show up within the hour, okay? They trifling. We got a black police chief. They claimed during the last election that crime was down. And I kept saying to myself, well, I guess crime is down when, one, you ain't responding to the crime, and number two, you're running the poor people. You know, most crimes are committed by poor people, like violent crimes, drug offenses, that type of thing. And so our city is becoming so expensive to live in that there's no affordable housing, and so they're driving a segment of the population out of the area. So that is why crime stats are showing down. But we have had, I mean, on average, we have about 15 murders a year in St. Pete. And keep in mind, St. Petersburg is a small town. We only have like 200,000 residents, of the like 260,000 residents, and then 60,000 maybe African American. And so we have about 15 to 20 murders a year. A lot of them go unsolved because our police department is so sorry. Okay, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's a good thing in the sense that they're not out here killing people. Cross my fingers that I don't jinx them and they go out and do something stupid. But a bad thing in the sense that their policing is very underwhelming, in my opinion. What else? I think that's about it. Like I said, I've been debating on the whole Joshua Brown thing, only because he's dead, he's gone. They had his funeral, I believe it was I don't even know if the funeral was last Saturday, if it's going to be this Saturday, because like I said, once all this stuff started coming out about him, they have video, like he was on Facebook and he did Facebook Live about everything. And 3 hours before he was murdered, he was on Facebook Live, getting ready, you know, for this drug deal, I guess, that was about to go down. And he would have, like, in his video, like, bricks of marijuana. He had a scale. He had a money counter. He had all the things that a drug dealer would have. And so, you know, there's no longer denying that he sold drugs. People were saying, you know, oh, if those guys really had came to kill him, you know, they would have went into the apartment and stole the drugs and all of this stuff. But in the police press conference where they talked about what happened, when they're talking about the 12 pounds of marijuana, the cartridges and all of this stuff, they're talking about what they found in his apartment when they got a search warrant to search his apartment. They're not talking about what he actually took downstairs to sell to the guys. And so people kind of like just confuse these things, and it goes back, you know, to the Merritt guy and the Jamal Bryants and, you know, all these other influencers on social media, you know, who are getting the facts mixed up. And it doesn't negate that, you know, the police could be setting him up, because like I said, they haven't mentioned the third suspect, who was actually the shooter. He ain't been captured yet. So, I mean, there is the possibility, a very small possibility, that it was a setup. But I don't know why the police would have needed to set him up. But, you know, that's what people want to run with. And so, I don't know. Like I said, I might do another video on it. I'm not sure. Share some of the video footage that I found. Or I might just wait until they actually arrest the third guy and then come back and do a video on that. But we'll have to wait and see. If I do another video, it'll be tomorrow. So guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you think. I know this is just a horrible situation, and I hate doing videos on these type of subjects because it just doesn't make any sense and there's just no rationale behind it. But go ahead, leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.